Hey everyone, welcome to round 2 of writing your 5-part paragraph. Today we're going to focus on writing your thesis statements. This is the key to any solid essay or paragraph. This is your argument. It's exactly what these pictures say. It's a roadmap for your essay. It tells you exactly where you're going to go and keeps you focused all the way there. If you don't have this thesis, it's very likely that your essay or paragraph will get off track and the reader won't really know what you're trying to tell them. That's why the thesis is pivotal in good writing. Just a quick reminder, this is what we've been working on. The 5-part paragraph structure we talked about yesterday. It's what you use whenever you're asked to write a formal or well-written paragraph response. You start with the topic sentence, which we talked about yesterday in the first video. And today we're going to be focusing on the thesis, your argument. Then in the next video, we'll do the example, explanations, and closing. So this is the 5-part paragraph structure. It's what you are using no matter when or where you are writing, whether it's ELA, social studies, science, or any class you're taking. And it can also be used not just in high school, but all the way through college, this format. Now in college, obviously, you're not going to write a lot of paragraphs. It's mostly going to be essays, but the structure can be adapted into an essay. So, part 2, we are talking about writing a thesis. Basically, a thesis is your hypothesis. It's your educated guess that you are going to argue and strive to prove in your body paragraphs. Just like in science class, you have an educated guess, a thought that you believe in, that you want to prove, then you take the rest of the lab proving it. The only difference is with a thesis, you're not stating it as a guess. You've already decided and you already believe in what you're going to say. Now you just have to prove it to everybody else. So the hypothesis is more your guess that you're going to prove to yourself and everybody. A thesis is, this is what I believe, this is my argument, and now I'm just going to persuade you. A thesis must be specific and include reasons within it to support the proposed idea. And it's generally no more than one sentence. You want to keep it brief and to the point. If you extend it too much beyond that, the reader can get lost and confused. State it up front, very direct. This is what I'm arguing. This is what I believe and why. And then spend the rest of your paragraph or your essay proving that statement. Okay? So you are going to proceed to the next slide to get the top secret, classified, mystical, magical thesis statement. Hint, this is where you say, ooh. Drum roll, please. And here it is, the mystical, magical thesis statement. Yay! Okay, so this is the formula you can follow to make a very straightforward thesis statement. This is great for starting in on this idea of and this concept of thesis writing. As you get better and better with it, you might step away from the structure, but for this point, for 10th grade, for 11th grade, you want to be using this format. Now, I even have students who still contact me from college and say that this is what has helped them in all their essay writing. If you don't get to that point where you're really comfortable, this format, it works all the way into your college years. So hang on to this. Don't ever forget this and memorize it. As it says, definitely copy me twice, actually. It's that important. This will help guide all of your writing. You use this in a 5-part paragraph, and you most definitely will use this in any essay you write, ever. So the format goes like this. By looking at blank, and in this first blank, you're going to provide the topic, a title, an article, a book, anything it is that you're focusing on. And we're going to look at a few examples as we go through. Now, typically in English, you're going to put a title of a text or an author, or you might even put a concept, like by looking at the author's use of imagery. Whatever it is you're focusing on as your source, that's what goes here. So this is your source, where your information comes from. You follow that and you say one can see. Now notice I say one. Try to stay away from you. Using that second person again takes your writing from that formal, believable, credible resource to one that's more familiar, and conversational, not as believable. One can see this. This is your main argument. It's whatever your assigned topic is for the essay. It's whatever you're arguing. It's whatever that you believe goes here. Then you follow that with a supporting statement, which is important because blank. These are basic reasons and examples to support your argument. This part sometimes can be optional, the which is important because part. If you need to beef it up more, you're going to want to use it. If you've got a lot right here in your argument section, you really solidly said it, you can get away with just that. Notice too that it says which. Which is not capitalized. You cannot start a sentence with which. So if you say one can see and then create your argument, and you want to, if you feel like your sentence is too long, getting a little too wordy, and you want to make this a separate sentence on its own to support your argument, use this instead of which. But which is fine if you connect with just a comma at the end of your argument. So this is your basic format that you're going to use to create your thesis statement. So let's break this down a little bit. So as we said in the beginning, a thesis statement needs to be unique and specific. These thesis statements should be specific and unique. It should not be able to apply to any other piece of work. For example, if you would say, by looking at the play Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, notice the source, we can see how true love will always overcome obstacles no matter what cost. And that's the argument you have, right? Is this a good thesis statement? Why or why not? Think about that. Answer with a partner. What did you come up with? Is it a good thesis statement or not? If you said no, you're right. Why? Because you can fit anything into that thesis statement. It is not unique and it is not specific. You could plug in any text into that and that argument wouldn't be true. By looking at the movie Shrek, one can see how true love will always overcome obstacles no matter what the cost. You could say by looking at the movie Speed, one can see how true love will always overcome obstacles no matter what the cost. There are many different examples that would fit solidly into this source material. It's not unique and specific enough. Try writing a better thesis statement for either Shrek or Romeo and Juliet at this point. Pause the video, write your thesis, make a little practice one, and then restart your video after you have uploaded it to your blog. So now that you guys have created a brilliant, better thesis that creates a good argument for Romeo and Juliet or Shrek, and you've posted it to your blog, here's just another example to give you another way to see this. You could say, by looking at the play Romeo and Juliet, again, notice your source. One can see, now we have our argument, that Shakespeare wished to create a definition for true love by exploring how far one might go in order to be with the one they are destined to be with. That's our argument. Already much stronger than just true love overcomes obstacles. That's very cliche. Now we're going to further support it with an even more specific and unique supporting statement, which is important because he expresses in this definition the disturbing notion that love is not always compatible with common sense. In other words, always compatible means common sense and love don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes we do stupid things for love. And that's a true statement for this play. So here we see, you can't put Shrek into this thesis statement. You can't plug in anything other than what fits for Romeo and Juliet, because it's here where he points out that love and common sense don't go together. Notice too how in this thesis statement, we're not getting into specific examples or details from the text. We're not talking about Romeo and Juliet yet. We're going to save that for our example section. Right now, we are just making an argument about what Shakespeare was trying to argue. In some sense, the thesis is often paired up well with the theme of your text. Thesis statements are arguments. That means you are stating an evaluation or supportable opinion. You're not stating a fact. Thesis cannot be made about a plot because the plot is what it is. It's not an argument. Your thesis resides in your interpretation, evaluation of the plot, looking at the author's techniques, purpose, theme, morals, whatever it is that you want to talk about. It's what you believe about it. So tell me, this example below. By looking at the fairy tale Cinderella, one can see that Cinderella was a maid who found her Prince Charming. Is that a thesis? Hopefully you said no. This is not a thesis. It's plot. It's not an argument. It's just a fact that Cinderella was a maid who found her Prince Charming. It does not work as a thesis. To recap, Lisa Simpson will help us out with a successful thesis statement. There's usually one sentence. It's a statement, not a question, and an argument. Identifies the subject of the paper and takes, as it is presented in your assignment, and takes a stand, an argument, rather than simply announcing a subject. That's what happens in your opening sentence. That's why the successful thesis statement comes second in your 5-part paragraph. Or if you're writing an essay, it comes at the end of the introduction. Here we have another English language arts example. By looking at The Memoir Night by Elie Wiesel. So here we have our subject, our source. One can see, through the author's use of imagery and symbolism, how the process of dehumanization can steal a person's identity and sense of self and humanity. Here's your argument. Notice how we are also pointing out the literary techniques that the author is using. So this just enhances it a little bit more and really pulls out that Regent's example of a thesis statement you can use. And we support it with, which is important because identity is the source of decency and hope. From here on, you would spend the rest of your essay or paragraph proving that dehumanization steals a person's identity and sense of self and humanity, and that identity is the source of decency and hope. Without that, we lose hope. Here's an example for social studies. By looking at the Rwandan genocide. So instead of a text, we have for our source a time period in history, an event in history, a person in history. One can see how cultural intolerance, a hands-off political approach, and skewed media representation can lead to great tragedy and wounds that may never heal. So here we listed three reasons why we're making this argument and what it's doing. And there's not a which is important because it's not really necessary. You've covered your argument in your 3 examples that you're going to talk about then in the essay that have been used in the Rwandan genocide that has led to horrible things, awful things happening. Finally, we have an example for sociology. By looking at the rising rates of homelessness in the USA, one can see that more must be done to alleviate or heal or fix this poverty, which is important because it is everyone's responsibility to work towards this end. So again, we see a subject, a source, that's a little bit different from the other ones we've seen. Now we're looking at a real issue in our source section. Then we have our argument that we have to do something about it. And this is why, because it's everybody's responsibility. So this supports our argument. Notice in all of these, you're not just saying one can see this issue is very important. It's actually giving a reason why, or something that we have to do, or something that we believe. It's not going for the simple. It's going for a strong argument. Now it's your turn. Choose a movie, short story, or fairy tale with which you are familiar. Come up with an argument based on the theme, the moral of the story, or the author's purpose. Write a good thesis statement for the story you have chosen using the mystical, magical thesis statement.